we're not going to use any of this video, but we're just going to look cute for social media.
Yeah,
and
that's
we're
what we
having a good
do.
time talking to each other, and that's what we
gesture?
do.
Should I gesture?
You can gesture. You can gesture. Welcome to Life Changing with Dori Fern, a podcast about the messy middle between when you hit pause and what comes next. I'm your host, Dori Fern. Greetings, listeners. If you're new to this podcast and listening because my guest today, fellow life changer Dori Palestine, has a more robust social media presence than I do, well, welcome to Life Changing with Dori Fern. I'm excited for you all to hear our interview. Dori is a delightful human. It was great to hear his thoughts on his own messy middle. As it turns out, you're coming here at the end of season 1 of the podcast. I'm really not sure what to do for season 2, or if I even want to continue it, because when I started this show, I did so wanting to chronicle the process part, the messy middle, as I call it, of shifting from one type of life, a good life, but one that just didn't feel very fulfilling to me in ways that I couldn't even put my finger on until I got some distance from it, quit my job, yada, yada. And you know what? It's more harmonious now. It really is. This deeply cynical Gen Xer has successfully done what I've set out to do. I built myself a new foundation for how I want to live, and I learned a lot about myself in the process. Took a lot of forward steps in a variety of directions, and I embraced imperfectly slow progress. Yay. Anyway, more on this after the interview. And if the show piques your interest, please do go back and listen to earlier episodes. Big news is that I started a new job. It's a 6-month gig doing content strategy for a new team within a large pharmaceutical company. The timing is perfection. I'll get a good salary with benefits, no less, without having to tap into my savings as I had feared that I might. And I'll be working from home unless I don't want to. And then I have the option to work in an office. So that is amazing. I've done a number of 6-month jobs in my consulting days, and they've always been my favorites because it's just enough time to settle in, get to know everyone, do some good work, solve some problems, look like a superstar if you do it right, and then skedaddle away on a high note. It's like the grandparents of employment opportunities. You swoop in, give some love, and get some back, and then tap dance out of there when the babies start crying. I'm choosing to go with things. I'm just going to try to be present for whatever happens during this new time of my life. Let go of whatever positive or negative narrative spin I've put on my life as I've known it, and just show up. Wish me luck. Speaking of someone I wish well for, I met Dori Palestine in July 2019 when I was asked to be a guest on his company's influencer marketing podcast to talk about food influencers. I talked about food media and the need for more diversity and representation, which was entirely lacking 3 years ago, and I'm happy to say is not entirely lacking now. I had seen on LinkedIn that Dori had lost his job about 6 months ago, and then I started following these regular unemployment update posts he started doing, and one of them caught my eye. I've read so many LinkedIn posts lately that are so highly curated. They're meant to convey, I don't know, quote unquote, real life, but they come across as manicured within an inch of their fleeting social media life. And Dori's posts were not. They were open and forthright and vulnerable and inquisitive. qualities I've wanted to express on this podcast. So here's part of one quote. It's time to broaden my horizons. I recently had an insightful conversation with a respected HR leader, and he gave my career pivot to employee experience a solid reality check. What he said now feels so obvious, it hurts. The likely reason I'm getting rejected is because I don't have direct HR experience. And that's exactly what they're looking for, regardless of transferable skills. So I'm pumping the brakes and changing my approach again. And I don't know, it just made me want to hear more about this experience for Danny. So I immediately messaged him. Danny's LinkedIn bio describes himself as low vision dad, husband and hobbyist, seeking a new path. And I asked him if he would talk to me for this last episode of season 1 of the podcast. And it was a real full circle moment. The life changer interviewing another life changer in a different stage of the messy middle. Take a listen to my interview with Danny Palestine. Danny Palestine, I have to tell you, this was such a beautiful way to start this interview. Me overhearing the past 10 minutes, you being the most incredible dad. First of all, it brought tears to my eyes. You did not even know that you were on and that I could see and hear everything going on. And I wouldn't even have told you any of this if anything was the least bit scandalous.
That's so funny.
But it was not.
Oh,
you
my
are amazing.
That's too funny. Just so you know, everything we were just talking about was just recorded. And now he's freaking out.
It's totally cool. Totally cool. Hello, messy middle. There's the family departing.
Oh my goodness. Too funny. Too funny.
Too funny and really kind of, I'm just going to pat myself on the back for knowing that this was going to be a good conversation, Danny Palestine.
There you go.
Right. I have to start by saying you are a unique person in my life. Do you know why?
Tell me why.
You are the only human being that I have only ever spoken to on a podcast.
How about that?
How about that?
We're podcast people together exclusively.
We are exclusively podcast partners in that way that we are, because we met when
from the podcast. So
you were doing podcast.
I don't want to. I'm going to let you down, but you're not my only podcast person, though, obviously, because
I know that.
Right. I just don't want you to feel like, because I use the word exclusive. And,
yes,
I get so it. I just want to temper the exclusivity a little.
I fully understand that you were getting around, and at this point, you're not my only podcast person, but you were my first.
There we go. Good one too.
It was a good one. It was about the need for diversity in food.
Was that 3 years ago? 4 years? Something crazy.
I want to say that was probably 3 years ago. Doesn't matter. Nobody cares. Nobody's checking this. And how are your nasal passages? Are they good?
I want to say they're better. It's definitely not where I was dreaming. I really wanted to just have the full open airways. And
what's the surgery called?
The deviated septum thing that separates your nostrils.
Yes,
mine was
it.
that. And I don't know. I had really high hopes here. It's better, and I'll take any improvement, because before it was just horrible. So I wish you continued
deep nasal breaths. I don't know what one says in that situation.
Yeah. I like that, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome. I had seen a while back that you had gotten laid off at Julius, where you worked, correct? Mm-hmm. I think it's probably a good time to pause and just tell people who the heck Danny Palestine is. So, Danny, what should people know about you?
Yeah, I think so. Thank you for the intro. I think what people need to know about me is that I am as cheesy as it sounds, I'm a people person. I love people in the sense that like I go to work every day not to do the work because the work has to get done, right? Like someone needs to type the thing, to email the thing to the person, to make the deck, to do the thing. I go to work every day because I want to connect with the people that I sit next to. And I want to make sure that they're feeling empowered. I want to make sure that they're laughing. I want to make sure that they're telling the stories that they want to tell because that makes them feel good. And that's because I want to build relationships with the people that I work with.
We are both marketers by the past however many years trade. And you are also looking to do something outside of marketing.
Yeah.
What is that and why is that?
Big question, Dori. I got laid off in March and I was pretty quick to realize that I'm pretty done with influencer marketing. I've been doing it for a long time. And before that, PR. I think that marketing to me, and I was working on a lot of big brands, right? I found that marketing to a consumer group that I frankly don't know or didn't have a personal connection to, or maybe didn't have a passion for, or working on a brand that I didn't think that I really believed in, or certainly wasn't using myself, it felt hollow. It felt like I really wasn't finding myself working with purpose, but not for a purpose that I could hold on to and bring into my life and internalize and love. And that was the missing piece. I got laid off, which was tough, but then I'm like, well, challenge means opportunity. And this is my chance to pivot. I really wanted to do something different. As you said, I want to get out of marketing. I want to try and flex those muscles. And I have a lot of skills, right? So my gut reaction was HR, people, culture type roles. I'm like, that makes a lot of sense to me. So I thought that there was a great opportunity for me there. I really, and it's as negative as it might sound, like I am not a live to work guy. I'm a work to live guy. And I know that some people wake up every day, and my wife is one of them. It is inspiring to see my wife go to work every day and she crushes it and she loves it and she does it. I really want to make sure that my joy is in my relationships and not in the work. For me, personally, I find joy in building that community.
Why do you think it's better to be the other way?
Wait, my way or her way? Or like
her way.
So the thing is that I think that we live in America, and I think that we live in a society.
I think, yes, we do live.
Yes,
it's here to confirm that.
Yeah. Fact.
Sorry to tell you, we do.
Listen, I graduated from college to date myself, like in 2008, right when the recession was hitting and competition.
Wait, I'm sorry, to date yourself? How old?
I know. I'm just people. Yeah, I know. Sorry, Dori. Whatever.
No. How old are you? I'm 30. I'm
36, and like I'm getting to that senior position and those senior roles, and I think that the context that I'm trying to portray is that out of college, everybody was looking for the same jobs, and especially for this now older millennial generation, the competition isn't fun, right? We are all out here trying to grind it out and get to that next spot. And I respect that. And I really, really do. And I remember talking to someone else who was on the podcast about her life in her 30s. And because I was turning 30 at the time, and she's like, 30s are better than your 20s. You're at a stage in your career where you're making a little bit more money, you're a little bit more in control of your destiny. And I'm like, I'm still figuring it out. And I am envious of the people who have figured it out already, or like my wife who woke up when she was 10 years old and knew that she wanted to be a clinical therapist. And you know what she's doing today? She's a clinical therapist and she's killing it. And I'm so proud of her. And I feel like I'm in my mindset because I didn't wake up when I was 10 years old and knew exactly what I wanted to do. So I've had to force myself to find joy in other things besides the grind. You know what I mean? And I found that in the relationships that I have with my colleagues.
Wow. We have a lot in common. I don't know if you got a chance to listen to any of the other episodes, but this is very familiar sounding.
Yeah?
Yeah. I was married to a person who always knew what he wanted to do. And so it's taken me a while. I am 56 and I have no apologies and I'm very happy for it. It gets better by the
There
way.
you go. I started just applying, right? And for every application that I put in, I felt like I was getting rejected twice, you know? And they just kept on coming and coming and coming. And
how did you feel about the rejection? It kind of sounds like a dumb question, but...
So, listen, rejection sucks. Everyone hates rejection. Everyone wants to get the nod. What I find the most helpful to get through that rejection, frankly, is writing those LinkedIn posts. I knew that going into my unemployment, and I said this to my wife, I said to her, I'm like, my network is going to come through. I saw so much engagement from those posts, and every time I posted, and people just came out of the woodwork. And so rejection didn't really give me a ton of insights off the bat, because I was applying to the same jobs and getting rejection and rejection and rejection. I'm like, it just seems pretty blanket. Like, I need to do something different. And it's through my network that really helped me learn how to do this pivot, maybe not so hard.
I just want to commend you, because a lot of us, when we get that rejection, we spend a lot of time going down that rabbit hole of some form of self-loathing. And I don't know how much time was between the rejection and the post, but I get the sense from you that you have this wonderful ability to not sit in that for a long time.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. And I'm glad that comes across, because it is really important to me. And I don't want to talk about this too much, but, the layoff came right after a diagnosis that I got about losing my vision. I got a diagnosis that I'm just slowly going to lose my vision over time, which is tough to hear, especially as a new father. But no cure, no nothing. And it's just like, what are you going to do? Right? Like, what are you going to do? And you know what they said? The only thing that they know that they think that might be a thing is to work out for 30 minutes a day. You know what I do? I work out 45 minutes a day. There's only so much data that you can get and wallow in that data. And then there's a certain amount of be like, this is just my reality. No one's going to make you apply to the job. No one's going to make you go to the gym. No one's going to make you eat healthy. You got to do it yourself. And I really just believe in that, because my wife has too much stress in her life, right? Like, my parents got stuff. My son is 2.5. I can't rely on him. So it's going to take me to just be my own advocate here. And again, rely on that network that I've been building. Shout out to Sam Kimmel. She inspired me with a quote that happiness is not a destination, it's the journey. It's true, right? You cannot just wait for the end to get here, because life is right now. And I feel so cheesy and cringy talking about this, but it's so true, right? And
it's okay. And I've talked about how cringy all of this.
Yeah.
I have a podcast, Danny, called Life Changing with Dori Fern. It's kind of built into the machine of this whole thing is those cringy things. And the truth of them.
I don't want to paint a picture that my life has been challenging, because I'm so privileged. It's insane, right? I get that. But my family's been through some stuff. And I think that you learn how to set a barometer, or I have learned how to set a barometer of, what sucks now and what could suck more. And with career stuff, there were those days that I was putting in 80 hours and weekends, right? Well, I'm not putting in 80 hours and weekends right now, so I'm okay. Life is okay. Life is good. I have my friends, I have my community, I have my people, and I don't want to present myself in a way that having this positivity is also innate, right? You got to believe that when I got my vision diagnosis, I came home and cried, right? I sat here and just yelled at the wall. I was angry and I was scared, and it was a reality that you don't know how to deal with until you're dealing with it. People deal with it in different ways, and I feel blessed that I was given an out in that they said to exercise, right? And I have so many hobbies, it's insane. I've been so good at channeling stress when I can, cooking, painting, podcasting when it was podcasting time. I think that I don't want to be on this podcast giving advice, but compartmentalizing is such an important aspect of professional and personal growth. that I don't have any tricks to do it. That is something that I will say comes.
What do you mean by compartmentalizing?
For a really long time, especially when I was at the agency, I really let my work stress bleed into my personal stress. And then I learned later how to channel that stress into new and different things. And so that's when instead of focusing all my energy at the agency into the work, I came home and painted for 2 hours because I just needed to let out that energy. And now I have this stress about like my eyesight, and I just channel that into exercise. Or I have this stress about what's going on with my son, and I just channel that into cooking and making sure that things are clean. And I think that I just saw an article about how hobbies are diminishing the burnout rate for 2022, right? In a virtual first world today, there's never a better opportunity to take care of yourself. And there are more hours in the day to find things that matter to you. And that's what I try and do. I just try and find things that matter to me.
So what I'm hearing is that you don't just remind yourself, hey, I'm lucky, hey, I'm privileged. It's more actions that shift to a happy place versus telling yourself, I don't have a reason to be upset, or I don't, right?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think idle hands are a real thing for me. Like if I'm not doing something, I'm just like focusing on negative. I need to give myself that catalyst to do exactly what you just said. And that's what's happening in the job hunt, actually. So stress about being unemployed, very focused and centered in my face. And I just channel that into networking, right? And that is that joy that I feel like I'm making progress. And so throughout my networking, I connected with a people leader in the space. I'm like, this guy's going to help me, right? Like Eric Bacolis, like shout out to you. He kind of gave me the kick in the pants to be like, hey, you're not going to get these HR roles. You're not going to get these people roles. And that's because you don't have any experience doing people in HR. And I'm like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm not going to get any. Kind of set me on the path to look more for internal comms. And what I like about that is that it is not marketing, but it marries the concepts that we were talking about in terms of strategy and positioning and all that stuff and measurement against the thing that I love most, which is building relationships with my colleagues. And so I am finding now that there is a place for me. It just took me a longer time to get there than I thought. Honestly, Dori, the most important thing to me right now is benefits, is health coverage and vision, health, and like that stuff, the flexibility to work from home, like if I'm not going to be able to drive, I can't drive anymore. So I really need, so many silver linings coming out of the pandemic, obviously a tragedy for the entire world, but like the remote life thing as a low vision person has really been miraculous. Fortunately, I'm privileged enough to be okay with a 2-income household. And I just need to take care of my family with the insurance stuff.
Your son was born during the pandemic.
Oh, yeah.
At the start, at the start of the pandemic, February 2020, correct?
There you go. He was born February 2020. Pandemic hit March. So we weren't planning on going anywhere anyway. But, it was scary having to go put on a backpack and run around Brooklyn looking for a formula. His name is Jake. Cute as a button. Lovely. But, that's something else, we're trying to take care of him. And, that's another thing that I'm looking for in a job is like someone who will understand that I have a son that has needs that my wife and I need to balance day in and day out with childcare. We haven't found a daycare or anything like that for him yet. I'm looking for a company that values me and everything that I got going on and know that I can just like get things that I need to get done, but also need to take care of my family.
Right. And we don't have to talk about this at any great length, but I feel like anyone listening is going to hear like what's so special about your child's needs.
Yeah.
And so I think it's worth saying that there are particular needs.
Yeah.
You don't have to go into any detail about it, but yeah, whatever you're comfortable with.
Yeah, I'll say this. He's in all the therapies, we spend a lot of time. His best friends are his therapists and his grandmothers. It's a balancing act between my wife and I. He's a joy to be around, but it is not just like drop your kid off at daycare. It is he's home with us and we're taking care of him and just baton passing him for the rest of the day and working with him to get him up to speed. And so I hope someday you get to meet him.
Yeah, same here. I want to thank you for being messy in this experience because people need to see modeled the messy experience of change.
Yeah.
And to have you on as somebody who has been going through that in your life, it just feels like a full circle moment in where I started this podcast and being that person who's just kind of letting it out there. And I'm so glad that you agreed to be my guest here.
Yeah, my pleasure. I love that, the messy transition. Like it's just like, because it's never going to be squeaky clean. Like it's just not reality. So I love that.
Danny, thank you so much. I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
And it's been a pleasure to get to know you a little bit better.
Pleasure.
Maybe one of these days we'll do something other than podcast with each other. But you know what?
Right?
If we're
our just podcast buddies, that's fine too.
Wouldn't be so bad. Thank you.
My pleasure.
And you take care and best of luck with everything. There you have it. My talk with the truly lovely Dani Palestine. Season 2. I'm not going to make any decisions right away. I don't want to do this anymore because this is moving into a different this, and it feels like I want to talk about something else. And I could, I guess, share my experiences with coaching with you, and maybe I will. It all really kind of depends on, one thing I don't really understand is I know who is listening to my podcast in general because it's a very small number of people right now. And they're mostly people who know me or who are friends of friends. It's not all of my closest friends. There are a couple of my closest friends who listen, who I think dig the way I talk and what I talk about, even if they wouldn't listen to other similar types of, I don't even know what a similar type of podcast is. Is it self-help? I don't know. I guess so, but I don't listen to self-help podcasts. It's not really my thing. I like interview podcasts, generally speaking. Maybe I should do that. So I don't know. Of course, partially it's what do I have to say that's going to influence it. But I do want to understand better what people like about this podcast. Some people I know like listening to my voice, which is very flattering and lovely, but you wouldn't keep listening if I wasn't saying something that you cared to hear. So reach out to me. Let me know what you like about the podcast and what you might want to hear from me moving forward. I do have a friend who had a very strong opinion that I should do a segment, likely at the end of whatever podcast I do, called Ask the Food Coach, because she and many other people in my life do always come to me with questions about why is this dish not turning out? So in her case, she was trying to figure out why, when she made her late aunt's recipe for chopped liver, why it wasn't coming out like her aunt's recipe. So I said, are you cooking the liver until it's pink in the middle? And she said, yes, because of course, those of us now, that's how we cook our liver. We don't cook it till it's cooked till an inch of our life. So I said, well, that's probably the issue because your aunt certainly cooked it till it was well done. So that was like a light bulb, and she made it that way, and it was just right. So I do tend to think kind of intuitively about things like that. Plus I do know a little something about cooking. I have another friend who texted me the other day with a picture of a pepper that was in her CSA box, and she didn't know if it was hot or not or what to do with it. So I sent her some ideas, including cut it open and put your tongue to it, and that will tell you if it's hot or not. The first podcast I ever wanted to do, I just wanted to talk to people, a variety of people, about what they had eaten that day. Because I really do believe that what people eat is a reflection on who they are and says so much about them, in addition to all the other things that are true about them. So maybe I'll go back to something like that. So I don't know. It was interesting when I was doing some homework for my coaching course. I hate to tell you, it's called a intention setting worksheet. I think you know me well enough by now that I do sort of cringe. And I didn't think it was something I had to do, but some of my fellow classmates told me I did. It's very long and it's been kind of a grind getting through it, but I have been really interested to note that the area of my life, you're looking at your emotional state, your physical, your emotional, your relationships, your social, and you're rating them based on how your spiritual life, like how you feel about them right now. So for example, one of the things is, how do you feel about how much you pray? And I wrote a 10 because I am really totally fine that I don't pray at all. It's not a thing I care about. I have a spiritual life, I like to think, but it does not manifest through prayer in any conventional way. So I was really interested to see that it was in the physical area of my life that I had the highest self ratings. So things like body image and aging, all these aspects of who we are as physical beings, how well we eat, our overall health, image, body image, all that stuff. And I really feel pretty good about myself in that way. And I really have for a long time. Maybe not as good as I feel right now, but this was interesting and illuminating to me. So something for me to consider as I think about the kind of coach that I want to be. But anyway, so these are things I'm thinking about. If you have any thoughts on any of this, I think you all know how to reach out to me. I'm at Dori Fern at Instagram. At Life Changing with Dori Fern is the podcast handle. You can message me there. I'm Dori Fern on LinkedIn. I suppose if you messaged me on Twitter, I would see it eventually, even though I'm not really on Twitter, and I probably need to do something about that if I want people to listen to my podcast, because it is a platform that I'm underutilizing in that way. I was an early adopter of Twitter, and I have not a great number of followers, but more than I have on other social media because I was on there so early, but I'm not a good tweeter, and I find the whole platform kind of overwhelming. Anyway, but you can reach out to me there and I will probably get it. If you haven't listened to the podcast in full, please do. I'm proud of it. It's one person's story of change, and it's me. It really is. It's me. So I hope you listen. I hope you like it. If you do like it, please rate it. Put a review, follow the podcast on Apple or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. And I'm wishing you all well. Have a great fall into winter. I'm not sure when I'll be back, but when I do, if I do, I'll be sure to let you all know. Take care. Thank you for listening to Life Changing with Dori Fern.